national law to make it easier to provide universal internet access. Mark Zuckerberg is saying in a Facebook post as well that Facebook would launch a satellite to bring internet access to large parts of sub-Saharan Africa. Now, Google and Facebook are wanting to use balloons and drone aircraft to expand internet access to 4 billion people, and of course mostly those sitting in Africa. Well, to discuss, we're now joined by Arthur Goldstuck from Worldwide Works. Great to have you with us.
Good evening.
Arthur. So, Twitter, some people say, is dying. The numbers are going down. It's all negative. Everybody fights on Twitter. Can this one man change things?
He might not be able to change things, but if anyone's going to, it's likely to be someone like Jack Dorsey, who was the original CEO and founder of Twitter. It was his idea right in the beginning, and he wants to bring his personal philosophy about what Twitter should be back into the platform. One of his ideas about Twitter is that simplicity has to drive everything. And there's been a lot of talk about Twitter dropping the 140 character limit. And that would destroy what Twitter is. So with
I agree, because the whole reason I'm on Twitter, for example, is because it's short and sweet. You can get news in brief. You don't have to listen to anybody venting forth on any issue.
Exactly. They often talk about the Twitter feed as a Twitter stream. So it's like watching a stream go by. You don't have to be there the whole time and make sure you don't miss anything, but you can almost pick up the atmosphere, the mood of a country or of fans of a sports team, for example, just following that Twitter stream. And there's something special about that. The moment you turn that into articles, you no longer have what made Twitter what it is. It becomes a different animal. So
isn't he looking at changing the 140 though?
There is talk about increasing the limit, but more like 200 characters. Rather than taking the limit away completely.
Yeah.
So we already have seen with direct messages on Twitter that you no longer have a limit, so you can send long letters by direct message, but that's very different. That is personal communication. So that's unlikely to come to Twitter itself. The other side of it, though, is that they have to find more ways to generate revenue, and they have been fairly successful. They have been building up their revenues, but they need to find new ways to bring more content and more advertising into that content onto Twitter. So not more characters necessarily, but certainly more forms of messaging.
Revenue is always the issue. Also, a criticism, there are a lot of news people on Twitter. I find it a little bit of a journalists club or people interested in news. Of course, it's good for celebrities, but how does it have to go wider than that?
Well, the benefit of having those news people is that Twitter becomes an alternative news feed. And a lot of people follow Twitter only for the news. So they follow the journalists and they follow the news sites themselves. And that in the last few years was one of the very big trends on Twitter. And we saw with the Oscar Pistorius bail hearing, that was a big moment for South Africa when the breaking news was happening on Twitter. And that brought a lot of South Africans onto Twitter as a breaking news service. But by the time the trial started, it had moved back to TV and radio, which suddenly became more immediate. They'd woken up, they realized that Twitter was competition. So from that point of view, Twitter is actually very good for the media.
Okay, so
it keeps them on their
lends itself
toes.
to breaking news. Yeah, it does indeed. Now, let's look at Facebook. Firstly, is a satellite over Africa viable? Are they allowed to do something like that?
It's an exciting project. There's nothing to stop them. There's thousands of communication satellites circling the globe, beaming to different parts of the world. So, for example, there's numerous TV services being beamed to Africa. And it's a case of you getting the right decoder or the right setting to get the signal of that
so
TV
like DSTV?
Signal. Exactly, exactly. So there's no regulation in terms of what can be beamed down from space, but there is a lot of regulation on the ground in terms of what you can receive, how advertisers can perform on those platforms, etc. So the big drawback or the big shortcoming in the Facebook plan is that you've got to get devices on the ground that can receive the signal and then redistribute the signal. It's not as easy as it sounds. You don't just put a signal, you don't just put a satellite in space, beam down a signal and people receive it. They have to receive it via some kind of receiver, and the individual won't have the appropriate receiver to receive a satellite signal. They've said that it'll be via off-the-shelf hardware, but someone's going to have to distribute that hardware and then someone's going to have to set up the hardware locally to distribute the signal from the satellite to the local population.
So this is actually a political process then, and it could take years of negotiations, things like that. It's not like a hovering big Wi-Fi machine, basically.
Exactly. People imagine it's Wi-Fi in the sky, but it's anything but that. It will still be Wi-Fi, but the Wi-Fi on the ground will be fed by the satellite signal. So it's not just a political issue, it's also a logistical issue, getting the equipment distributed, and it's also a commercial issue, getting the equipment sold. They're certainly not going to distribute that for free.
So now there's also other plans, drones and balloons, and it all sounds exciting, and behind it I think is the understanding that connectivity should be a human right, basically. But would it give, say it goes ahead, would it give Facebook and Google all sorts of controls that we shouldn't want them to have?
This is part of the objection to what Facebook in particular are doing with their Internetorg project, which is geared to bringing free internet access to underdeveloped markets. And in India in particular, they've come under massive criticism. Local service providers say it's giving them an unfair advantage. And
how does that work?
Because Facebook convinces certain operators to provide their app, their Internetorg app, for free. They've renamed it now. It's called Basics. And in other words, basic apps or basic sites that you will need as a beginning internet user. And you then download that onto your phone, and your service provider, if they've signed onto Internet.org, then provides free access. So there's no data charge to access those sites. The problem there, of course, is that particular sites are now getting the advantage of free access, and sites that aren't part of Internet.org or Basics are going to be hugely disadvantaged. So that's the commercial and the political objection to what Zuckerberg is doing.
Is the motivation to get everybody channeled onto Facebook?
That's part of it, but what you're now seeing is a separation of the app and the Internet.org project. So the Internet.org project is Zuckerberg's attempt to show that they really do want to bring access to people regardless of how Facebook benefits, which will benefit from the app. Internet.org is going to be geared towards purely providing connectivity. Ultimately, of course, Facebook does benefit. And why it's such a significant move for them is because if you look at the South African market with 52 million people, a quarter of those people now, according to our latest statistics, are on Facebook. So a quarter of all South Africans are using Facebook. In a country like Nigeria, you're going to see similar proportions. A massive market, massive opportunity for Facebook, which is already happening. Same in Kenya, same in Egypt. So the 4 biggest internet markets on this continent already using Facebook as their primary destination. And of course, Facebook wants to extend internet access, because regardless of whether it's free or not, the more people who have internet access, the more people will use Facebook, and the more advertising
and they can charge the advertising revenue.
Exactly.
Let's end with just your idea, perhaps, of where this is all going. How will internet access look in a few years, do you think?
I think there's going to be 2 or 3 internets. The one will be the internet of Facebook. And already you see it on mobile devices where in South Africa, if you use an iPhone or an Android phone, the 4 apps you're most likely to download, and this again is from our statistics from the past year showing the most downloaded apps in South Africa, are WhatsApp, Facebook, Facebook Messenger, and Instagram, which are all owned by Facebook. So Facebook is already gaining dominance over your smartphone. Sitting in your pocket is some kind of Facebook machine. So clearly that's going to be a central component of the internet. Then there's going to be the Google internet, which is Google Search, YouTube, and other services like Gmail owned by YouTube. And then there'll be the rest. And Facebook and Google are going to be spooking it out for control of the smartphone in particular. And the rest are going to be trying to get a little share of the rest of the action.
Do you have any privacy concerns? Because now, if you have these 2 giants collecting our data, there's just been a lawsuit in America, and I don't know, my concern, and I'm not even on Facebook, my concern is things may be contained today, but they stay there forever, and you don't know how information will be used in the future.
Privacy is a massive issue, and I still believe that the likes of Facebook and Google don't take it seriously enough. Every now and then they get wrapped over the knuckles for going a little too far. Both privacy and what you own with regard to your own output, whether it's your face, your identity, or the content that you put online. They've got to take it far more seriously, or else they're going to find the groundswell of opposition to what they're doing. If they want the world to play their game, they must also play the game the world wants them to play, which is to look after privacy, to look after security, and in particular identity. Identity is going to be one of the major battlegrounds of the near future. Privacy is part of that, but it's identity and the ability to invade or steal or fake your identity. That's going to be a major issue.
This is a massive issue. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Fascinating, as always. Arthur Goldstuck, CEO of Worldwide Works, and we have to leave it